Okay, I'd like to open the special meeting here of the Golden Rain Foundation M&C Committee here Monday, January the 13th. Let's see how many people we have here from the media. Anyone doesn't look like any? No one? Okay. Okay, is like to work item 3 now, approval of the agenda. Any comments on it? Okay, that's approved as is then. Let's see, approve, yes.
Are you off of item number 3?
I'm on 4 now. Do you have a problem with 3?
Yes.
What?
I wanted to add an item to the agenda. Mike, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Is it an emergency?
No.
You can only add it to the agenda if it's an emergency.
Point of order, special meeting, you can't add.
Okay.
We'll take care of it later.
All right.
In fact,
Yes.
we need to have some of the third people stand by after the meeting. Okay, approval of meeting report for October the 9th. Any comments on that?
No.
Okay, that stands approved. Chairman's remarks. We have a special meeting here today to cover some things that we haven't had a meeting for a number of months now. And so I thought I wanted to get going here early. And so that's why we have the things that you see on our agenda. A couple of things that are very important that we need to get started on. And with that, that's all I will say. Okay, member comments, items not on the agenda.
We have one speaker, Andre Torn.
From the audience, anyone from the audience? Time your
389Q Andre Torn. At this point, I can see that GRF is ready to tackling some major project, Clubhouse One. I'm not talking about specific about Clubhouse One, but what I'm thinking is possibly we need to have the one budget concept, all the mutuals working together towards some major projects that will take a lot of money, resources from this community. Basically, each of the HOAs, GRF, Third, and the United just don't have enough money to take care of their big issues at this point. So it's necessary that all the boards working together and say, okay, where is the must needs and the wish list? What's the most important thing for this community? Let's pull together and make it happen. Otherwise, we will always working on the smaller project. We don't have the money, let's just forget about it, put it until next year. Next year, we'll just do the same thing, and we will never finish all those major projects. That's just my comment. Thank you very much.
And thank you. Anybody else?
I have no further speaker cards.
Pardon me?
I have no further speaker cards. There's nobody else that's wanted to speak.
Okay.
That's it. No more speakers.
Okay, let's continue then. Department head update. Ernesto.
Mr. Chair, board members, good afternoon. I wanted to give a little bit of a context about the meeting today, as I understand it. So please correct me if I'm off. But with the intent of being productive and being able to achieve what you want to achieve today, I want to make sure that a couple things are stated up front. First of all, the list of projects that you're about to look at this afternoon, they're all funded. They're all funded to a great extent. There's some of those projects that will have to come back for supplemental appropriations, but by and large, 95% of those dollars are already funded. The board approved the business plans, which includes the GRF capital, which is all funded. All of the projects, although we're not going to be discussing the mutuals projects, all of the projects in the mutuals budgets, they're all funded. The budget that you approve has funding to get it all done. So there's no projects that will go unfunded or be kicked to next year because there is no funding. So just wanted to make sure that
You're
that's clear.
talking about project log items?
I'm talking about all your projects and programs. The budgets that the boards adopted for 2020, they're all funded. They all have funding for it, okay? With exception of a couple of them, and we can talk about those. What I intend to do is go project by project, but first I wanted to lay out my understanding of why we're meeting this afternoon is that you were interested in reviewing all of the capital that is in the GRF budget and come up with priorities for staff to execute those and have a discussion as to perhaps what projects may be deferred to a later time or eliminated to create additional funding for other priorities.
Well, what I was thinking, first of all, is should we do something like that? If we don't get a vote for digging in and having that kind of awareness of things, then, we just,
Exactly. So what I propose to do today is go project by project, and I will give you staff's recommendation as to whether we move forward or you think about deleting that project or deferring it, and then you deliberate on those projects to see what you want to do with it and provide staff direction. Whatever direction is provided to staff today that is different from what the adopted budget, we will in turn take it to the board. So the board makes a decision as to whether they want to change the capital program as they have already adopted it. But that's my understanding of the plan today. So we have two items. One of them is to create a task force to review the deliverables on the clubhouse assessment so that this task force can kind of lead the charge as to where we're going to go with Clubhouse One. So that's the first one. And we provided you a charter, basically similar to what other charters for other committees and other task forces. And you review that. You may make changes to that charter. We'll make the changes and then bring the final to board. So that's the one item. The following item is to go through item by item of all the capital that is in the GRF budget so that you can make a decision as to what you want to do with each one of those projects. So just wanted to put that out there, make sure that we're all on the same page.
but these projects, are they on the project log or in addition to that?
The project log for 2020 has not been publicized yet, has not been printed, so you don't have that. But what we did is we took everything that we have in the books for 2020, and we created that project log for you. So this is, what you have here is the first print of the 2020 project log, which includes all of the projects for 2020.
Wonderful.
So we'll go through each one of them. Yeah, for GRF only.
Wonderful.
Okay. So. That is item 10, that is correct. Thank you. So those are my comments today, Mr. Chair, and we can jump right in if you want to.
Thank you. And jumping in involves item 8. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Formation of Clubhouse One Assessment Task Force.
150? Very good. Okay, thank you. $150. So very good, Mr. Chair. We are on item number 8, formation of Clubhouse One Assessment Task Force. And you were going to discuss that. I understand that there's interest in moving forward to form a task force to specifically look into Clubhouse One and what we will be doing with Clubhouse One. So the charge for that task force will be to review the deliverables from SVA architects who are currently working on an assessment for the clubhouse, and make any decisions relative to whatever recommendations will go to the board moving forward on Clubhouse One. So with that, we've provided you a charter, and that's in front of you. On page 1 of 2 on agenda item number 9. And we're open for suggestions from the committee as to whether that charter is adequate to move forward with the formation of the task force.
Okay. Yes, John?
Ernesto, you've got the scope of work listed on item 6 of the charter, which is on page 2.
Yes, I'll get to it.
And yet it doesn't address any of these items, mechanical assessment, structural assessment. Shouldn't those be listed in there? For example, does the building meet seismic code? Shouldn't that be listed in the scope of work?
Mr. Chair, if I may, first of all, I was just reminded by Lori that the first thing we need to do is we need a motion and a vote to actually form the task force. So if we could have that before, and then I'll respond to you.
Thank you.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion to create this? Okay,
I'll
John?
make a motion to establish a task
Is there a
force.
second? Okay. Got it.
Unanimous?
We got it.
Very good.
Motion and
I got a
second.
unanimous
Now we
approval.
are in discussion.
Now we're in discussion. John?
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, John.
Well,
Are you
you want to
through?
talk about the task force, or you want to talk about the charter?
Task force first. We need a vote on the task force.
Okay, are you looking for volunteers, Mr. Chair?
Wait a minute. What was the motion again?
Do we establish a task force?
So the motion is
Yeah.
to form a task force.
Okay, and we proved that. So you're
So-
looking for people to be on that?
So, yeah, we would need you to assign some members of that task force.
Bunny, do we have people identified for that?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you come up here and present the names? Are the names,
Here come the names of,
I don't think the names are on there. You what?
I use 15 facilities and the sports that are there. So I probably use that.
so they'll,
Oh, okay.
I don't think there are names of.
Just a minute, Bert.
it's popular.
Bunny?
What?
Actually, I think if we approve this activity,
Right.
the people, the staff that will be on it has already been selected.
So we're going to approve the motion, and then we will take it to the board and we will assign people at that point in time. Because the board still has to approve the committee and the charter.
Very good, so
Yeah.
we can certainly do that. So we'll go ahead, we have a motion and a vote to form the task force. So that's done. And then we will, when we go to.
Assign
When
people.
we go to the board will assign members
Right.
to be on the task force.
Yes,
Right.
so that's what we approved. Yes.
Are you, Bunny, are you going to distribute this assignment such that the housing mutuals have members on the task force?
Yes, it'll be very similar to the PAC right now. the PAC
Similar to what we did for Clubhouse
For-
2?
Right, right, and the PAC Center. It's very much the same. It's
That's
just
a com-
basically an
that's-
ad hoc, and that's why we're bringing it before the M&C, okay? Because it actually is part of the M&C. It's a subcommittee of the M&C. So they have to bring it forward, make a motion, and then we get it approved by the board and approve the charter and choose the members that will be on it. Am I being clear?
Okay.
You have a,
So, we just went through this morning with regard to the president's and vice president's meeting, whereby if this is an ad hoc committee or a task force, it's got to carry the 3-2-2-1
right,
regimen, okay?
Right.
And each of the mutuals should make the selection as to who those two people should be. So it
Right.
shouldn't be GRF making that selection.
Agreed.
absolutely the same format that we used for the other
Right.
ad hoc committee.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Randazzo. It is an ad hoc committee.
It
I wanna
is
make-
ad hoc.
Thank you for making that
Right,
clarification.
Right. Okay, any other questions?
Huh?
Okay, thank you.
So we go back to item number 9.
Okay.
Well, on that same subject, is if each of the mutuals is going to recommend 2 people, why shouldn't we, as the special committee, make those recommendations for our mutual? Where
Well,
does
I-
this special committee
Jan-
fit into, to this recommendation process?
John?
I should think we would
Well,
be in
I
the
would
process.
think we already said that your president, you folks would assign the 2 people you want
Oh,
on
so you're gonna leave
this.
it totally up to to the third mutual to come up with 2 names?
Yeah,
Yeah. We're gonna, GRF is not going to say, no, I don't want John, I want Carl,
Or maybe we want John
so
Prosper or
forth.
something like that.
they don't want me.
that's what she
Okay,
said. The
what's next
mutuals-
here?
The mutuals would appoint our own.
How are we doing on this?
Very good. So we're at item 9, and now we'd like to address John's question relative to the scope of work. As you may know, SVA Architects was retained to provide a full assessment of Clubhouse 1. That assessment includes architectural, structural, mechanical, roofing, electrical, everything that has to do with that facility, they did assess. They looked at the seismic condition of the building. They looked at ADA. They looked at parking. They looked at the swimming pool, the entire facility. So they will provide you with that assessment that will be presented to you in February. And that assessment will include several alternatives as how to move forward with Clubhouse 1. And they will have tentative pricing in there as well, so that the board can look at them, so that you can look at them, and make a decision as to where you want to go with that facility. So
So this list of, on item 6 really doesn't have much meaning. Because there's a lot of things left off of this list.
right, but essentially, what the ad hoc committee will be assigned will be to look at the entire, everything that the architect has put together, all the mechanical, structural, everything, and that will be presented in great detail to you when that report is brought here.
Ernesto, not all these folks here have the book on that for Clubhouse 1. So what I have taken is the critical areas and made copies and handed them out
Right.
today.
The intent today is not to discuss that report at all. The intent today is simply to form an ad hoc committee once that report is brought to you in full detail, because right now it's in draft form, it's not even completed. So when that is brought to you in February, then you can have full deliberation as to what the report contains. You can ask all the questions, and then you can talk about where you go forward. But at this point, this afternoon, we're not going to be discussing that report at all because it's in draft form. It hasn't even been distributed to you. So
Okay.
Excuse me,
Go ahead, take mine.
you didn't give me a copy.
I only made 6. I thought there'd be enough for everybody, but I don't have enough.
Well, would you please make sure?
but you,
You'll be getting this
Raina,
next one.
you haven't missed anything because we're going to be providing you a full report when it comes back, when it's completed in February. So,
Okay.
what we're looking for right now, go ahead, Joe.
Just to be sure, John, the draft he's referring to that we're not talking about, that's to be a final version of it, is 158 pages. So a lot of what we're talking about today, there's a lot more to it, so you know. Sure. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, so today we're just talking about the ad hoc committee, forming the ad hoc committee. So with that, I want to turn it to you and tell me if there's something you would like to add or subtract from the task force, from the ad hoc committee charter, and then we can make those corrections, and then whatever comes back to the board will be a corrected copy.
Okay, yes? Go ahead, Carl.
So under item 6, to be consistent with what John Frankel has indicated here, okay, possibly we can add the words, and this is wordsmithing now, for the renovation of Clubhouse 1, as a minimum, will focus on, which means that those 8, whatever bullet items are just the tip of the iceberg. So I would, renovation of Clubhouse 1, as a minimum, will focus on.
Thank you, we'll add that.
All right, any other comments? I guess, okay, go ahead.
I have 2 on the charter. First of all, the charter, as you read through it, says it's to be a joint operation between M&C and CAC. And so I think that needs to be,
That's what it says.
right, this is what it says. When the committee is being formed, that has to be taken into account of both of those committees. Secondly, nowhere in that charter, and I'm thinking number 8 or 9, does it mention the corporate members. There is no way this is going to get by without having to go to the corporate members.
Okay.
Talk about a finance committee, you talk about staff, and you talk there, but there's nothing that mentions the corporate members.
Bunny, why don't you come up here?
I'd just like to make a quick comment. First of all, this charter here, it's a mirror image of what you have for the PAC. It's identical to the PAC. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so exactly what's for the PAC is in here. The other item I wanted to mention is that whatever the committee decides to do, it has to go to the board to approve. Right, it would have to go to a GRF board to approve. If the project is in excess of the amount that triggers all corporation review, then it has to go to all corporations to review it.
There's no way a project of this size is not.
Right, that's correct. So, so that needs to be discussed at that point. This is just will be a working group that can review the deliverables from the architect and make recommendations to the board. And then the board needs to decide where they go with that.
Now, this is very similar to what we did on the Village Greens when we went through that on 2008, 9, and 10. So very similar.
We have 2 speakers when you're ready. Are you still in discussion? Otherwise, I have 2 speakers who want to come to the podium.
I think we're ready for some speakers.
Okay. The first speaker is Dick Rader.
I just would like to know, excuse me, what the timeline is for deliberations and then instituting, going forth with building Clubhouse 1. I know we're in the planning stages, but I just wanted to get an idea where you're going.
I can give a shot at that.
Sure, go ahead, and Monday can back you up.
So this is the embryonic stages of this project, as you know. This is just a conceptual development that the architect has prepared based on the assessment that was put together. So there has been no decision as to where we go with this, whether to demolish it, build it brand new, whether to refurbish it, whether just to give it a paint job. None of it has been decided at this point. So from the point that you are presented the assessment, which it will be next month, at that point, once you look at the assessment, you'll make recommendations as to what's being presented in that assessment. There's going to be several concepts presented to you in that assessment. You will make a recommendation to the board.
Is that the final document?
That will be the final document that gets presented to this body.
Okay.
And that final document will have several options, recommendations, just based on concepts that you can look at and ask questions about and make a decision as to whether you want to recommend one of those options or none of them, or you want to just pass the buck on to the board to look at the entire package and not make any decisions. So it's entirely up to this committee. But at that point, it'll come back to here. Then it will go to the board. At that point, we still don't have any construction documents. So the board will have to decide at that point which concept they approve to move forward with. If we're talking about reconstructing Clubhouse 1, then we're talking at least a year to develop plans and specifications and estimates for that contract before we even go out to bid. So we're not going to be turning any dirt at Clubhouse 1 for at least a year or two. Okay, so I want to make sure that that's clear with everybody. You know, the process will have to be taken to the board. They will need, the board will decide on a concept, and then that concept will have to be developed. The development of that concept will have to be brought back to this body and to the board again to, you know, detail it a little bit better. Once we have that, then the consultant can be directed to move forward with preparation of plans and specifications and estimates. And that's the real meat of it. That's what you can take and advertise for actual construction. At that point, you'll have better estimates. You'll have a much better idea of what you're looking at in terms of dollars, in terms of timing. But at this point, we're at least a year or two away from that point. So hopefully that addressed your question.
Yeah, Ernesto, about 2 days or so before that meeting next month, each director needs to have the final copy of this so that when they come into the meeting, they know what's...
Absolutely, absolutely. Before the meeting, we hope to maybe even make it available even sooner.
Good.
So, because there's a lot of information in there, so that
Yeah.
you can be ready to ask questions to the consultant.
And you should get 11 copies to each housing board before the meeting, so they can come up with their two names.
We could certainly do that. I mean, we're talking a lot of trees dead here, but we'll do whatever is necessary to provide a good feedback from the community.
Okay, I
We
just
also
want
have
to
several
make one
speakers.
comment. And one of my promises when I became president was to make sure that the corporate members were involved with Clubhouse One. Any type of capital expenditures of this site, of this such, will come before the corporate members before any business activity. That's how the bylaw reads. So once this is brought before the M&C, we review it, the committee reviews it, then it will go to the corporate members, because it is the corporate members that have to decide on the option, not the board, not GRF board. It has to be the corporate members. So that's the plan.
So it should be in the charter.
Pardon?
It should be in the charter.
Well, we could add that to the charter, yes. And I have added things like that in the charters, you know, for GRF, but those are in process, so.
Okay, thanks, Bonnie.
Questions?
The next speaker, are you ready for the next speaker, Mr. Chair?
Okay.
The next speaker is John Pearlstone.
Good afternoon, everyone. John Pearlstone. I was going to suggest to the committee, I hope you'll consider adding a provision that talks about assessment and evaluation of other related construction projects. I don't think, speaking personally, and I think if you look big picture, you may or may not agree, and you can discuss it. I don't think a decision can be made on Clubhouse One in isolation of what we're doing with other property and other buildings. It's already been discussed. There are corporate offices moving over to Clubhouse One. If they are, well, what's happening to this building? Is the land behind here going to get used in some way, shape, or another? So I would not want to be in a situation, I've watched it happen here, where it's like, oh, we're not allowed to talk about that. It's not in our charter, when it would have a huge financial impact to look at a particular construction remedy for Clubhouse One without thinking about what else is happening throughout the village for the uses of Clubhouse One. So simply putting that out there as a suggested option to have in the charter, so you're not excluded from that discussion if, I'll put in parentheses when, because I'm pretty sure it's going to happen, that discussion comes up. We're going to do this for Clubhouse One. What happens to this? That's all I wanted to share. Thanks.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Pat English.
Pat English, 2022D. I'm more or less saying what Bunny said. I didn't know she was going to say what she did. But several years ago, under 2.4.1 and 2.6.1, if you recall, United and the group of us, we actually got it passed so that it has, if there's anything over 500,000 or 1,000 square feet, it has to go to corporate members' meeting. So we are in that position with this where we'll have to go to a corporate members' meeting. So it's going to take quite a long time before we get to actually doing anything, as Ernesto told us. Thank you.
Wonderful.
The next speaker is Bert Moldow.
Thank you. We're talking about a building that's 54 years old and was probably not built the way buildings are built today, and probably is very short on being able to meet the requirements of construction today. So we don't know where we're going. We don't know whether we can renovate. The consultant's report describes three options which you have to look at. Okay, one option is bulldoze it down and start all over again. You have to understand the way that clubhouse was built to begin with. It was built in phases. It was not all built at once. Okay, and you may be able to renovate in phases, or you may be able to take down completely certain portions of that building. There's a lot of decisions that have to be made. In addition, if you're going to make such changes as are being recommended, it seems to me that you've got to go and poll or find out from the users of that facility what it is that they like about it, what it is that they think is lacking. There is no survey called for at all, and I think that is an essential part of any beginning, okay?
Sounds good.
The other thing is that I think this is nice that staff has given you a beginning for the charter, but I think that the charter has to come from the task force, okay? So when you get your task force in place, you got to go through your charter, and then that charter has to be brought before the board. Not before then, but that's early work that has to be done on the part of the task force, not the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. Is that it, Laura?
No. The next speaker is Ralph Majid.
Afternoon. If I'm
Afternoon.
not mistaken, the ad hoc committee for the renovation of Clubhouse 2 had at-large members, people that had expertise in the community, building construction, architecture, et cetera. And I'm wondering why it's limited to 2 members from each of the mutuals. Why is the ad hoc committee limited to just 2 members? From the boards. So what I'm asking is, would this ad hoc committee allow other members of the community to serve on this board that have expertise in different fields?
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's what we did when we did the Village Greens. I had an ad in our local paper asking for people with structural engineers, mechanical, electrical, and so forth to come and help us with the various systems that we have in this new building that we'll be building.
I happen to be a retired structural engineer, civil engineer, and contractor. That's why I'm asking.
Excellent, yeah.
Also, I don't know if this is the proper time, but there has been talk of a lot of people interested in closing one of the swimming pools. And I would like to request that that be undertaken in this study.
Okay, thank you.
That concludes the speakers.
Pardon me?
That concludes the speakers.
Okay, thank you, Lauren.
Hey, Jim?
Wait a minute, here come the guys trying to sneak in.
So I have a couple
Yes, I'm
of
sorry,
things,
we do
with
have one
regard
more
to the
speaker.
speakers that I'd like to say.
Okay.
With regard to the last gentleman, the PAC committee had, ad hoc committee had advisors on it besides the actual two directors per mutual, okay? So it's two from United, two from Third. These were directors, okay? And I'm assuming that this ad hoc committee for this would also have advisors. So that would fall into that category of having these additional people. Is that my, because it doesn't say so in the charter, so I don't know if that is something that needs to be added. But the
doesn't,
PAC
but-
committee did have that.
That's correct. It doesn't, but it doesn't preclude the ad hoc committee to include experts from the community that may want to weigh in.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's what's important is the size of this ad hoc committee.
Right.
The larger you make this ad hoc committee, the more difficult a decision is.
Correct. And I agree with what Bert had said also, whereby this would be the starting point of any charter, but then when the ad hoc committee actually sits down for the first one, everybody looks at it and says if they agree with this, and then we can come up with the official charter, I guess, as a possibility.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I have to talk about has to do with what John Pearlstone has said, and I'd like to mimic the words that he used, whereby this Clubhouse One we're looking at it in a myopic standpoint right now, it looks to me, okay? We're just looking at Clubhouse One. But Clubhouse One, I think he has a very valid point, is a big picture item, okay? Because there's the PAC, Clubhouse One, the Possibility Community Center, how that all gels in. And would the charter for this particular committee, ad hoc committee, also address the big picture of how that would also enjoin itself to the whole rest of the 5-year, 10-year, 11-year to 15-year plan, okay? Because if we just are myopically looking at Clubhouse One from the perspective of how we're going to do it, what we're going to add, all those construction type of things, then we're losing out on the big picture that John brought out that I think is also important. Get what I'm saying?
I could see that we could go back and survey what types of people are using that Clubhouse One. There's an exercise area, there's a number of different things, and the question is, what is the usage of those? And maybe some of them we ought to delete and bring in some additional things.
And that, if I may, that will occur as part of the discussion with the architect. Once you decide on a course of action, they will do programmatic development where they will query all of the users of the facility. They will also ask, similar to what they did for the PAC, ask the current users what the best use for the areas are. What would you like to see improve? What would you like to see change? So all of that would eventually be incorporated in whatever option you move forward with. Relative to Director Randazzo's comments as to not look at the PAC as project as an individual project, but look at it in the context of all of the priorities that you have for the community. I think that's very, very important. And I think that your analysis should be conducted in parallel with looking at your 10-year capital improvement plan to see what your total needs are. Because relative to those total needs, you may only just want to give it a paint job. I mean, in the extreme. But you have to look at your 10-year plan and see what the total priorities are and see how you're planning on funding those. So you're absolutely correct. But that needs to be done in parallel with you looking at the concepts that are being developed by the architect.
So my question is that something that needs to get added to the charter as a 10-year plan? That was my question.
Well, I think the charter needs to be really focused on Clubhouse One. You know, I think that they need to look at the financial part of it, but looking at the entire community and all the priorities, I think that's a different discussion, and they need to be brought together. But I'm not sure that you want to charge the charter with doing the overall community analysis as well as looking at the Clubhouse One itself. So just a suggestion.
Can I speak to that?
Go ahead.
Excuse me. I'm a new kid on the block, with GRF. And the first thing I did was try to figure out how we can better organize our committees. And actually, in the president's meeting this morning, I showed this plan idea for our committees, for the staff, and they were delighted with it. And what I'm doing is I'm proposing a new charter on business planning, which is already a committee, but what I'm proposing is that this committee will actually look at the 10-year plans, we'll look at new business ideas, we'll look about all the things that you're talking about today. It will go before the board in February to get approved. But that is what the plan is, and I think that it will serve GRF and staff. It'll be a win-win situation to be able to have a committee that can actually analyze the current businesses and current budgets and new ideas and combine it with budgets for better money management. That's what I call money, because when you're trying to manipulate the budget and the revenues and all that, it's got to be under one committee. So that's what I'm proposing. No one has heard about this, just a few people. Carl heard about it this morning, and Rhina. But so far, from what I hear from people with this idea, it's a win-win situation for staff and GRF. You want a coffee house?
Okay. Thank you, Bonnie. Yes, sir.
389Q, Andre Torn. I totally agree with John's proposal statement and Carl's statement. I'm looking at a little bit different point of view. I think we need to look at the overall strategic plan. What is the thing that we want to finish? All the considerations in there divided into must, need, and the wish list. At this point, last year we had Performing Arts Center project. We spent money on the consultants. What happened? I have no clue. Okay, previously we spent a lot of consulting money on the pickleball. What happened? Nothing. So we spent all these monies on the $100,000 here and there. It adds up. Could be doing some good project for us, but we waste the money. So I understand that Ernesto is talking about let's focus on the Clubhouse One and let's consolidate the other project together. But that's a little bit of backward planning. Usually what we do is if you start with Clubhouse One and then try to add on, you're going to have modifications. You're going to come back and modify this one, modify that one, and then it becomes hodgepodge and spaghetti kind of the planning. why don't we just start from the top and say, what are the things, what are the opportunities we have? I'm looking at opportunities we have and put them together and say, okay, if we want to do this one, how can we incorporate all different opportunities together? For example, Clubhouse One pool, can we make it an indoor one? If we just say, okay, we want to renovate the Clubhouse One, and then later want to say, okay, we want to make it a indoor pool, now we put in an add-on. Add-on structure is not as solid as original plan. So what I'm asking is, maybe GRF should start talking about it, and maybe all the mutuals should chip in and talk about the whole plan, strategic plan. What are we going to accomplish in 10 years? 10 years later, we want a brand new Clubhouse One. Well, 20 years later, we want another upgrade on the Clubhouse 3, Performing Arts Center. When can we do it? What are the things? Maybe we can incorporate some of them in there and make life much easier, make the process much easier. So we must have a complete list of all the projects available for us to consider what are the things to put it in. I personally don't like the idea that we just do Clubhouse One and then add on this one, add on that one. That's probably not the best way to use our resources. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, is that it, Lori?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ernesto, do we need to talk any more on this number?
No, I think that if those are the comments that you wanted to make on the ad hoc charter, we'll go ahead and incorporate those comments and we'll take it to the board, and perhaps the process should be, as Director Randazzo suggested, that the charter becomes final once the task force is formed and they decide what changes need to be made to that,
Okay, what you're saying, do we need a motion for you, or you just?
Yes, we do need a motion, yeah, relative to the
Okay,
comments that were
motion for
made.
that?
I move.
Okay,
That we form
second. Any discussion?
My only discussion is, what are we moving to do? We had a couple of things.
Staff has about
You're-
15 items.
Okay, so we're saying right now
They're
that this is
taking
going
notes.
to be the preliminary charter, and when we get into committee, then we will finalize the charter.
Right,
Is that
so
what we moved to?
what you're moving is to accept the comments that were made, to be incorporated into a charter, and to move it to the board for further discussion so that it can be passed on to the task force so that they can finalize the charter.
Okay, just checking.
Everybody in favor of the motion, raise your hand, please. Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we on number 10 now?
Mr. Chair, as I mentioned, item 10 is essentially what we're providing you. It's a list of all the projects that are in the 2020 GRF capital plan. It does not include vehicles but it does include all of your capital. So what we wanted to do is go through each one of these projects. I would let you know what staff's recommendation is relative to that project, and you provide staff direction as to what you want to see done with that project.
Okay.
So I will start with the PAC renovation and maintenance upgrades. Staff recommendation is that that project not be changed at this time, that you are essentially invested quite a bit of funding on this project. You've already completed the plans and specifications and estimates. We have gone through the city. We've incorporated the city's comments. You've commissioned a full assessment of the facility. We went through and we did assess the feedback from the community and the users of the facility. So at this point, we're ready to advertise that project for construction. Once we advertise it, we'll receive bids, which will be brought back to you with a recommendation to award a contract. At that point, you know exactly what the project will cost because the bids will reflect that, and you'll be ready to go with the project. So you have the majority of the funding available for the project. There may or may not be a supplemental appropriation required, depending on where the bids come in. But that project is already complete. In addition to that, that project is needed. This is not like a nice thing to do for that facility. It's something that must be done to that facility to maintain a viable asset for you. So staff's recommendation is that you do not do anything with that project, and you allow us to move forward and advertise it for bids.
Okay, motion, Carl.
I would like to point out the fact that it came out at the PAC committee meeting, that the number that's here on this list here, which is the 3.268 as the balance, okay, the supplemental funding would be in the area of 1 to 1.2 additional million dollars in order to put this thing to bed. So I just wanted to let you know, this is not supplemental funding, a couple of extra bucks, okay? 1 to 1.2 million dollars additional in order to put this to bed based on the latest estimate. And that latest estimate right now, if those people, they've got detailed drawings, okay? Those drawings it's plus or minus 10% of that number. So we're not talking about supplemental funding that go from 100,000 to $1 million. It's at least 1 to 1.2 million dollars, okay? Just be aware of that fact. When we do approve this, it would be an additional supplemental funding of 1 to 1.2 million dollars.
Okay, go ahead.
Ernesto, one of the questions I have, it came up at the GRF meeting. We wondered if there was some way to save some money on Clubhouse 3. Also, I recognize there are probably a few things we may want to do down the road at some point in time. But one of the recommendations you said we could have done was not done the remodel of the lobby and that, which I think it's so small we should go ahead and do that. But you did mention you didn't know very much about the lighting aspect or the audio aspect. Is there any, I think Bunny mentioned the fact at that time, at that meeting, are we getting the Chevrolet, or are we getting the Rolls-Royce type of thing? Is there any savings? I think as this goes to GRF, you may see some kickback if you have something this large as what Carl's talking about coming up. In other words, is there some place we can find some savings, or is there some individual thing we should delay that's large enough that might make a difference? But I think there could be some question for that as it goes out for bid. Is there any savings in those two areas that still produce a nice facility for the people that use it? I'll defer to you.
Right, so when this was designed by SB8 Architects, they retained the services of a large number of consultants with specialties in audio, in the audiovisual, and the rigging, and the lighting, the electrical, the structural, all of that. They came up with a design that they felt was a reasonable design, as far as whether it's a Cadillac or a Chevy. I couldn't really tell you about that. They did design it on the basis of the facility that you have. They designed it on the basis of what they heard from the community as the needs for that facility, the theater groups that utilize that facility. And they came up with a design that they felt was reasonable. All along the design process, the mantra was put out there that we wanted to make sure that everything was reasonable and competitive. So we didn't want to Cadillac the project. And that was our understanding, that the design that they finally developed was a compromise to provide what was mentioned as a need from the users and staff at that facility. And that's essentially what we arrived at. Eliminating the portion, like you said, of the lobbies and the meeting rooms is a very small portion of the entire project. So at this point, if we want to analyze what could possibly be saved or do additional value engineering in the project, we will have to stop the project, go back to the architect, go back to the drawing board. The architect will have to provide us a contract change order to do that work, because they will have to engage all of their consultants again and relook at the project with the specifics in mind to scale it down. So you cannot easily scale down a project of that magnitude because the specifications are all tied together and the plans are all tied together. So anything that you change affects other areas of the project. So Can that be done? Absolutely, it can be done. But you're looking at possible delays of months to do that. So if that's the direction, then we will go ahead and tell the architect, stop the process, and let's go and request that they provide us a price, a proposal, to relook at the project and reduce its cost.
So to that point, is there anything there that if you can ascertain, or somewhere along the line we do, that this is the only thing that's best for the community and not just the clubs there themselves, if we're going to try to save money there, and you're mentioning going back to architecture, I'm assuming you're telling me that's going to be pretty expensive, is there any one thing we do there if we're going to do lighting one year, do sound another year? Does that at all work? I'm kind of mentioning this to you only for you to have it as a thought process of what may come up at some point in time on supplemental funding. What can we do? I mean, I think the lobbying stuff is very inexpensive. That's not worth messing with that at all. But if there's something we can do to keep it on budget, that would be, I think, you'd get 100% unanimous vote, I think, in that case. In above that, you may get some blowback on it and what we can do either slower, or is there anything we do a little more cost effectively? So that's just to kind of inform you what's going on, basically.
Sure. So anything is possible. Again, we will require to stop and have the architect reevaluate the project. So we're looking months down the road, and we're looking at additional change orders to this contract. So can it be done? Absolutely can be done. Now, the other thing I want to mention is that just about everything that's in this project, it's a need. It's not a nice thing to have, other than the lobby and paint and carpet and tiles and fixtures in the meeting rooms and the lobby. Everything else is a need. The lighting is failing in the main house. So that needs to be changed. It's, you can ignore it, but it's failing. So we don't have lifts to actually replace that lighting up in the main house. It's a very involved project. So if you're going to do anything in there, this is the time to do it. And like I said, it's not a nice thing to have, it's a need. The air conditioning system, which is the bulk of this project, it's a need. It's shot, it's done. It's, exceeded its useful life. So it needs to be done. All the rigging and all of the curtains and all of that, it's actually a hazard now. It's some of it is condemned. So it's not a nice thing to do, it's actually a need. So what I'm trying to point out is that most of what's in this project is actually a need in order to keep this asset viable for you and going. So can we change it? Can we value engineer it again? Absolutely you can. We will have to stop, go back to the architect, get a proposal, and come back to you with different numbers. They can look at it, but what they're going to come back, and I can tell you that right now, it's, well, let's eliminate the lighting, or let's eliminate the lobby or the meeting rooms, or let's eliminate the curtains. I mean, that's what they're going to come back to you with. And what we've heard from staff as well as the theater groups, as well as the facility users, is that these things are needed now. Yesterday.
Okay.
So
we make our decisions based on the individual clubs then, not the community?
No, this went to the community. We had user groups and people from the community actually meet and talk about what they wanted to see there in the future.
Okay.
So, and there's a whole very thick report that's available relative to the direction provided through that process.
No, I appreciate it. I think it's just a matter of looking at every project to Carl's point and John's point, for example, what amount of money we spend any one year, where we spend in one place, we may not spend in another. So we want to make sure if there's something we can phase in, like Clubhouse One, I'm sure it'd be a phase-in probably thing, that we don't do anything that hurts a lot of other locations because we do something a little faster, a little more expensive if we need to. So just appreciate your input. Thank you.
Honor?
While I appreciate the intent of new committee members and new mutual board members to save money, those of us who've been on this committee in the past know that all of this has been done over and over again. And if we're going to have new people constantly want new evaluations, we're never going to get off the dime. Nothing is ever going to get done. So please question outside of the meeting and familiarize yourself with the work that's already been done so we can go ahead with projects.
If I may, we're assuming everything's perfect all the time, and I wasn't in on this. I agree with Ryan's point. People did this, and I realized most of those people were in these clubs and organizations who had that need and desire. If you recall, there was a project here, it cost about 500 and some thousand, that could have cost about 2.5 million. As a resident, I stopped, and that saved us a couple $1 million for other things. So it's not that I haven't been on the committee, I don't know anything. I'm just asking questions to make sure we make the right decisions. Thank you.
Okay, Ernesto, where,
Can I make a comment?
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Quite all right. I think I want to kind of support both of what's just been said. I think Ryan is on target, and I just wanted to share because I'm heavily involved with the PAC committee and obviously want to see what's best for the community. My understanding of what we're trying to do today is just assess the priorities of these projects. The budgets are provided from staff. The opportunities to see improvements in those budgets would be very premature on the Performing Arts Center simply because the real drawings haven't been bid. So to try to analyze what to drop, what to add, what to reevaluate, what to reassess at this point would stop a process that we finally have moving forward after, is it really like 10 years or something of that nature? So just be aware, committee members, that this is being scrutinized very closely. We are going to be looking at options. I mean, as much as I respect everything Ernesto had said, we uncovered a couple of paths that might be available to us, such as percentage of reductions in bids that could be done without changing scope of services. So we'll be able to look at that once the bids are in and maybe go with a phased-in process or even eliminate something without having to stop everything and rebid it. Carl and I had worked together in the meeting and uncovered that there was money funded in 2021 that would allow a scaled-in project, and we're already essentially in February of 2020. There may be adequate funding already budgeted to handle this, even if we have to do a supplemental appropriation. So there's a lot of questions that are going to get answered, believe me.
Is this all part of Finance Committee activities?
No, the Performing Arts Center Committee. And then, obviously, I look at the finances as a connection with that. But we had meetings, and that's all I'm suggesting to you is the things you're asking questions about today were hashed out at great detail in the Performing Arts Center Committee meeting and are continuing to be hashed out. So I'm only sharing input saying, I believe, and I just want to support this project. I think it definitely should move forward. I would have loved to have been there day one and said, okay, let's build this big master plan and figure out all the priorities like we're trying to do with Clubhouse One. But this thing, they already broke it into 3 separate sections. The project being proposed is based absolutely on needs, not wants. There's a few things that we could, look at, but in the big picture, these are the big needs for the PAC. And we should find a way to get it moved forward. So I'm hoping you'll leave it on this list and we'll work together to move it forward, when some of the other ones may not rank as high a priority as I think you're going to see shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good.
I'd like to point out something. Downtime for the events that are scheduled for Clubhouse 3 have already been put in place, and shows have been moved around. You cannot expect to continue to move that window of when the work's going to be done. You ought to be, if we've told people that the clubhouse is going to be shut down, say May 1st, then by May 1st, we ought to be able to move on to that thing before, because then we expect to have it back open again before Christmas. It's just my comment on that.
Okay. Jim?
Thank you. Carl?
So the intent of me pointing out the fact that there would be supplemental fundings in the $1 million category based on the drawings that we have was the fact that this log talks about a $3.2 million available as a balance, and we should have had a comment in here for full disclosure to say that in order to make this happen, we would need to fund additional $1 million based on the estimates that we've gotten from these people. And that wasn't in this log, okay? So what I'm saying is that the log didn't have all the information to make an informed decision. And that's the reason why I said what I said. You know, it will be, if everybody's willing to basically gulp hard and spend an additional $1 million, then so be it. I mean, I'm just saying. But this information was not in here. Full disclosure, it should have been in the comments.
Ernesto, are you looking for a vote on this this first one?
No, I'm not looking for a
Okay.
vote. I'm essentially giving you as much information as I have, as well as staff recommendation as to what to do with these projects, to see if there's funding that you can either set aside or save, or not do the project at all, or provide priorities for staff to work on.
Okay, well, move on to the next one.
Okay, the next one is the energy consultant services. There essentially isn't any money left on that balance for 2020, and I don't think GRF appropriated any additional funding for, this is the TEC consultant, the Energy Coalition. The reason why it's in here is because it's an active project. So this is the consultant that was recommended to all corporations to retain, so that we could be responsive to the Village Energy Task Force when they request some information or analysis or anything that they wanted us to do. So there's really no funding left in there, so there's no need to go into significant discussion on this.
Okay?
The next one is the community center first floor renovation project. This project, we've had significant discussion on this, and we feel that the project can be scaled down considerably. So that project, there's funding available in there. We are recommending that out of the balance of $621,262, about $150,000 is reserved for any upgrades to the first floor, the first floor call center, if you would, to do refurbishment to that area that is needed, but certainly not the 621,262. So you have a balance of 262. So $262 may be reallocated. You can put it in the PAC. You can put it wherever you want. Again, I'm not telling you what to do with the dollars. I'm just simply telling you what staff recommendation is. And if you do delete that project, what the balance is that you will have to, additional money that you have to, in your reserves. So, so our recommendation is that you can't defund that project with exception of $150,000.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good news.
The next one is the relocation of security operations to the community center. That's another project that is nowhere near happening, and it's not in the near future at this point. We will have to first do the work downstairs on the first level. We haven't even gotten to that. So there's another $981,149 that you can reinvest.
Wow.
Okay? Service center, radiant heater and ventilation fan replacements. Staff does not recommend that you defund that project. We suggest that you keep that going. There's a balance of $75,000, but this is a safety issue. Staff is working in conditions that are just not tenable at this point, and we need to upgrade those heaters. So we suggest that you don't touch that balance.
Okay.
Service center generator, again, this is another project that we're not recommending that you defund it. The current generator at this location is at the end of its useful life, and it's a very critical generator to have because it powers the fuel islands which in the event of an emergency, you would need that pretty badly to keep the fleet going. So we're suggesting that you leave that project alone.
Okay?
Number 7 is Clubhouse One renovation. And obviously, that project, it's the money that was allocated for that, it's almost all spent because the assessment it's completed. We're going to be presenting it to you next month. So there's nothing to do with that project at this point. Okay? We're not talking about the construction dollars at this point. We're just talking about the assessment work, and that's already completed, so.
Wonderful.
Number 8 is Clubhouse One HVAC. That funding, $350,000, that was earmarked to replace the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system at that location. It's on hold because we don't know which way we're going to go with Clubhouse One. So there's another $350,000 that you can either put on Clubhouse One or transfer it to the PAC. Again, that's a separate discussion, but there's $350,000 there that you can avail yourselves of. Clubhouse One gymnasium wall padding, that's another project that is a safety-related project. So we're requesting that you don't touch that funding, and you leave that project alone for now. Clubhouse One pool and spa plastering. The plastering is in very poor condition. It's coming off in chunks. That needs to be replaced now. Whether we redo Clubhouse One in 2 years from now or not, we need to replaster the pool now. So so that's a project we're recommending that, again, you leave alone, don't touch that funding. Clubhouse 2 lawn bowling roof. The expectancy of the current roof is 2021. So there's $30,000 that you can avail yourselves of. You can do away with that, and we can see how we can stretch the life of that roof. The gate replacement, the main service gates at the yard across the street, those are already, we started construction on those. So I suggest that you don't do anything with that funding. Complete that project. The same goes for gate replacements at RV Lot B. That's the same project. We started it today, so that funding needs to remain in place. Gate 16 driving range improvements. This is a project that was conceived some time ago. We went through and we did the conceptual designs for the project. Then we retained the services of a designer, and they completed the design. We're at the point right now that we can advertise the project. There's a balance in there of approximately $638,000. This says $500,000, but you had previously allocated about $138,000 for some golf netting along Clubhouse 2, along Moulton, and that project was never built, so you have 138. So we're adding that to the 500, which gives you a total of 638 available for the Gate 16 driving range improvements. We have Brian Gruner, who's here today, I believe. Brian, he can talk a little bit about why that project is needed to you, so you have a pretty good idea as to whether you want to move forward with that or defund it and make the funding available for something else, because that's a pretty high ticket item. So, Brian, if you could.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. The current driving range condition is essentially, there's no grass out there. It's a dirt field, essentially. It is very hard on staff and the equipment in itself to go out there to pick up all the balls. The way it's laid out currently, a lot of the balls actually roll down to the side, and we lose quite a few balls on the other side of the netting, and require staff to go through there, and we pick up about 20,000 balls each, about every 6 months from that other side of the netting, which is towards Moulton. The current, it's, like I mentioned, there's no grass out there. It's something that is certainly needed in regards to the aesthetics and also the functionality for the golfers and the program that we have down there. Like I mentioned, the equipment does get broken quite regularly because it is very, very difficult to drive our vehicles out there to pick up the balls. It's very dusty in the summer. In the winter, we have to shut down. After any type of rain, we have to shut down for at least a week in order for the mud to dry up, and we can go out there and actually pick up the balls. So again, that obviously affects the revenue in regards to how much money we're breaking in or taking in. With the improvements of the driving range itself, we feel that we can generate another at least $50,000 a year. So it's something that over a 10-year time frame, at a minimum, we can certainly recoup all that money that's laid out to rebuild the current driving range and make it better and improve its services to the community. In addition, it's certainly also currently it's an eyesore. It's right on Moulton. It's something that will certainly help improve and increase property values for our community as well, and also be a selling point for future people coming in. So it is something that we definitely recommend to go ahead and continue the funding and move forward with that project.
Thank you.
Question.
Go ahead.
If you bump this above 500,000, do you have to go to the corporate boards to get approval?
Actually, it's at $638,000 available in the pot right now for this project. We're trying to get the design to come in at the $500 level. But then, again, that's a discussion that will need to occur, whether we need all corporate funding for this.
Annette Soul.
Concerning this project, I've been told that there is a driving range around here that does use AstroTurf. And it is done in such a way that it is actually graded where the balls roll back, and it is done automatically, but like a rut where they catch the balls. And that way you can basically run the driving range with a lot less staff and a lot less upkeep. And I mentioned this to one of our other board members, Yvonne Horton, who has seen this. And basically, I'm just wondering if we shouldn't consider something like that. And if we can't scale it to come back this way, since there's an automatic grade that slopes that way, maybe we can grab it that way, which is along Moulton. But I think we should look at, I know we have rain right now, but with drought and everything else, I know we've spent money on a consultant. I don't know if I know we want to put a chip and a putt range there, but when we talk about the land or the value of it, we already have the land, so we have the value. The question going forward is to do the driving range where we can, and I know, Jim, you said this in the past, we could get out there and grade it and, you know what I mean, throw some grass on it and stuff, but what I'm really suggesting is that I had never considered and I never was aware of it till after this amount of money passed, that there's actually a driving range in Southern California that is done with AstroTurf, which would save us thousands of dollars in water bills, and requires less staff because of the grading and because of the rut and the balls going down, and we are able to collect them, down below. But maybe we should, I hate to say it, but maybe we should delay this and look into that other type of a driving range and do some research and see what we can come up with that. I mean, maybe we ought to slow this down and, consider that as one thing. And if I may speak about a couple other things that we're speaking about today, I don't want to pop up and down, but when we were talking about the Clubhouse 1 gymnasium wall padding, I'm in that Clubhouse 1 in that gymnasium wall padding. There's not much on there now, and I'm like, if we're already going to be redoing the building, like, why bother? I know none of us would basically, until we decided we were going to get in a new car, we wouldn't be throwing money into the clunker, if you know what I mean. So I just, into the car we have until we really made a decision. So I think that one could be postponed. But the Clubhouse 2 lawn bowling roof, I know Ernesto, and I respect Ernesto tremendously. I think it's more important that we do the roof than we do the padding on that for the people. But other than that, I mean, that's just my own opinion, and Ernesto is certainly, the expert. But as far as the Gate 16 driving range, I do suggest that all of us maybe look into and even find out where that is, and even all of us go over there and view it and see what we need to learn about this. This is almost $1 million. And look at what another community is doing in order to save water and to save employee expense and, see how it's working. That's just a thought. I didn't know if anybody was aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Carl.
I think he,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Kush was
Go ahead.
first.
Thank you, Carl. I concur with you, Annette. We are spending a lot more than we should on the driving range. It's a pretty high number, and we need to review this again. And on the other point, I have to leave, so John Paulson is going to fill in for me.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Carl.
I would just like to ditto what Kush and Annette said. I believe that there's probably, we do things basically based on traditional classical ways of doing business. However, with all the new technology today and various other things, we may be able to save some money. So why spend money on something that we really don't need to spend money on? Yeah, we need to do something with this driving range, but at the same time, we could do it in a way that maybe is less costly and, as she said, bigger bang for the buck, AstroTurf and various other things whereby we reduce our staff time and reduce our water usage. So I'm in agreement with what was stated by Kush and what was stated by Annette. Okay, I think we need to put this stop on this, or at least put it into first gear right now and at least look at it from a different perspective.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, before we go through, I just wanted to make sure that, that you know that we already spent $85,000 in design for this project. So that design is already completed. As we went through the design process, a lot of conversation occurred with the designer, because I'm not a golfer. So I have to rely on the designer who designs golf courses for a living. And we did question the quality of the grass, because one of the grasses that they were proposing initially was very, very expensive, and we were way over budget. So we talked to the designer and told him we need to bring this at the $500 level, because I think it was $750,000 last estimate that we had. So one of the things that was done is actually we replaced the grass, the type of grass that they were going to use. I believe we had discussions relative to the use of synthetic grass, and it was decided that that was not the way to go. So there was all of this discussion that is occurring here as far as providing you the latest and greatest technology out there, the most cost-effective, the best water usage possible, the collection of the balls. The project requires, part of the design requires that the site be regraded to a certain extent. I believe it's a balanced site. We don't have to import or export dirt. However, it will be regraded to provide better collection of the balls, to provide better drainage. Right now, the site, if you go look at it, it's like this, and it just drops towards the fence, towards Molten. That site will be balanced a little bit better, so you get better drainage. The project includes the installation of drainage as well, additional drainage than what's out there, to provide a better control of the flow of water and the maintenance of the grass that's going to be installed. So my point is that a lot of the discussion that's occurring today took place with the designer, with the golf course experts here in VMS, with Brian's staff, who manages the golf course right now, with Brian, the designer, the golf course designer expert, Guy West, our project manager, and myself. We had those discussions. Quite a bit of time was spent to get you the optimum design, and that design was completed. You already spent $85,000 on this project. So again, if you want to reconsider this, we can go back to the designer and we can give him your feedback as to what other things you want to consider, and then, and we'll get a change order from the contractor, from the consultant, to come up with a better estimate or to respond to questions from you. I just want to make sure that you understand that. Now, the design is completed. That doesn't mean, I'm not trying to push or pull here. I'm just trying to give you information so you can make an informed decision.
Okay, one more.
Yeah, quick question. Under what category is the 85,000 of expenses incurred to date listed? Where was that offset?
That all has come out of the initial budget for this, which I believe it was a facility fund. It was from the facility fund?
Is that not a project log item? Is that on the financial statements of GRF, or where do I find that information?
There was a different expenditure that was allocated towards this project, correct? In addition to the 500,000.
There was another,
You want to come up to the podium, guy?
I don't have my books with me, so I'm not going to be able to tell you what exact fund it was funded, but it was all approved through the GRF process for funding. Every single one of those were allocated, from the design to the netting to the reconstruction of the current golf facility. So I can definitely, pull those numbers up and what job numbers they were allocated to. But I'm sorry, I wasn't.
So we can give you that, though, that information, John. What the $500,000 that's in here, that's strictly construction. And that's why
I'd just like to learn a little more about the history.
Sure. And we can give you what the appropriations were and when they were made and what business plan approved them. We can certainly do that. The $500,000 that you're seeing here is strictly for the construction. And in addition to that, like I said, there's $138,000 that was left over from the netting project that was never done that will be added to this if needed. If not, that goes back in the pot.
Yeah. The only problem I've had with that job is that the pictures I've seen of the final thing it's absolutely gorgeous. In fact, it's so gorgeous, it looks better than the golf course where we want it to look real nice for the people. This is driving range, it's just guys up there hit the ball as far as they can and then they leave. So there's no need to have anything so nice there where it's taking money away from the golf course or whatever, and for that place. That's kind of a little ragtag place. Anyway, let's see. Are we all through here? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I haven't seen any pictures of this, and I agree with a lot of the stuff Annette said. I haven't seen any pictures, like I said, but the first thing I said, the first word I said when I saw this project, I looked at the $500,000 and I just said, wow. I've used the driving range, and I used to work in the oil fields where they move a lot of dirt around. And so I just said, wow. But I haven't seen the pictures. I'd like to, that would be nice to see.
Okay, let's move on.
Did you want to make a comment?
All right, number 15, it's...
No, I want the next one.
It's replacement of the welding shop. I'm not sure if you have ventured back there and looked at that welding shop, but it's essentially a shack that is just in terrible shape. It's not safe. Doesn't have the electrical safety that's needed for a welding shop. It's essentially an all metal building that doesn't have the room or the safety needed for that type of operation, and we are recommending that we move forward with that project. That the design has already been completed on that, and I believe it's already been submitted to the city for approval. And that's basically it. So our recommendation is that not be defunded.
Jim?
Okay. Carl?
So I'm in agreement that the welding shop, it's a safety issue, okay, with welding, obviously. But my only question is, $80,530 seems a little short. I'm thinking that this is not enough money for what you want to do, especially for a welding shop. Seems a little shy.
Guy, do we have the latest estimate on that? Are we anticipating any supplemental requests for this?
We went out to bids, and the bids are coming in now.
So it sounds to me like we have, that's the money that we're going to need, right?
Yeah, we're anticipating on that particular project, I think we discussed this, that it will need a supplemental, but I don't know how much. We have to wait to see what the bids come in at.
Probably at least double. I say you're talking about 200,000.
I couldn't tell you that,
250,000.
I'm not sure, but we are receiving bids, and we'll put that together on a bid spread. But we're in the process right now receiving the bids.
Yeah, and this is no reflection on any one person, but the thing right now is, okay, sometimes with these budgets, okay, we come up with this budget, and then we go out for bid, and the budget is like, the estimate is like twice or three times the budget, okay? So while I think we need to do something with the welding shop and not the driving range, the numbers are a little bit shy, and that's my only concern.
Okay.
My question is, does this building include the electrical that's going to be needed?
Absolutely.
You're kidding.
Yes. Yes. It's a
Whoever's
metal
getting
building.
this is doing a hell of a job then.
Yeah, it includes the electrical as well as the replacement of the metal shop with another metal building.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when we do that electrical, it doesn't affect the electrical? I'm assuming you're going to just tap into one of the other buildings?
We're tapping on a transformer that's nearby.
Okay.
Right now,
Because you need 340.
Yeah, right now, the welding shop is stealing electricity from a light pole.
Yeah, I know.
So, just.
Okay, continue on.
Okay, tennis center building, we're requesting that that project be left alone. We already went out to bid. And we're just waiting to begin construction on that project.
Can I make a comment, Jim, on that one?
Okay.
Yeah, I just feel, for the record, it's worth mentioning that that project was highly debated and analyzed, and staff recommended against the supplemental, and here we are, approved and now moving ahead with it. So scrutinizing all these things carefully is a very valuable and useful project, and I'm just very glad we're doing it.
Thank you.
Number 17, this is a truck washout facility at the yard. This is a project that we highly recommend you don't touch it, you let it move forward. This will meet MPDS requirements for VMS, which the city brought up to our attention. We're essentially creating pollution that is going into the storm drains right now, and we could see huge fines in the range of $50,000 and up from the Regional Water Control Board. So what this proposes to do is to collect the water from our sweepers and dispose of that water into a local storm drain and take care of the debris that's generated from our sweepers to be able to manage that water. Number 18, again, we're recommending that you don't do anything with this funding. This is funding for your paving and for your seal coats and your concrete repairs to your roads. And we're definitely not recommending that you touch that funding at all.
Okay.
The Maintenance Service Center parking lot lighting. This is a safety project that was put in the budget and approved by the GRF board. Is to look into adding lighting to the staff parking lot. There is no lighting right now. We're looking at the possibility of adding solar lighting. So we're looking at many options. We don't have a design at this point, and so we just calculated an amount to put in there as a placeholder, but we really don't know where we're going to come out on this. We need to go to a lighting contractor and start getting bids and start looking at possible designs to light this in the most economical form.
I was just going to comment that
Bert?
if you do go to solar and you go to 30-foot, let's say, poles, you're way over at 250. You should be able to come in at least below 150.
So
Thank you.
again, we don't know what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
We have no idea what this thing is going to look like. We're going to go get some economical designs and see where the pricing comes in. If it's 150, then it'll be 150. And we put 250 in the budget so that we could, have some cushion in there. If it's less, it's less. So again, we're recommending that you don't touch that. That's a safety project, and it should really move forward. Item number 20, it's LED walkway lighting at clubhouses 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This again, it's a safety project. The walkway lighting at these clubhouses, it's very, very old. We've jerry-rigged it several times to keep it working. There's no parts available for it. A lot of it is rusted out from the landscaping irrigation. So again, this is something that needs to be looked at in a short order. So we're recommending that you leave that funding in place. The tennis courts, number 21 tennis courts, LED lighting. Again, there's $50,000 to relight those courts and to change the lighting. It could be changing just the light bulbs, or, with $50,000, I think probably just a change of the light bulb itself, if possible, could be done. Maybe not. Maybe we need to look at the fixtures themselves, if we cannot just replace the bulbs. But there's $50,000, my understanding in discussions with Recreation Director, it's something that could be defunded. So there's another $50,000 that you can allocate for other purposes.
Yeah. I actually did an ROI on that. It would take almost 20 to 30 years. The utilization of lights is so low that it just does not warrant changing them out to LEDs, and I'm an LED enthusiast.
So there you go. There's an opinion for taking the funding away. Number 22, this is Shepherd's Crooks at Gate 3. The only good thing I can say about this project is that we'll complete all of the Shepherd's Crooks needs in GRF, period. Do you need to do $240,000 worth of work this year? No, you do not. In fact, you need to do, you're required to do very, very little. You're required to do 300 linear feet at about $100 per linear foot. So that's all you really need to do. The city has a conditional use permit requirement for us to do Shepherd's Crooks, to start replacing the barbed wire out there. It's approximately 300 linear feet per corporation, so a total of 900 feet for the community annually. So you don't need to do $240,000 worth of work. You can do, like I said, $3,000 or what is it? $30,000, thank you, worth of work. So that's up to you. The only good thing about this project is that if you leave it in place, it will complete all of your Shepherd's Crooks and GRF, and then you're done.
Okay.
And it looks nicer than barbed wire.
It's much nicer. I can't disagree with that. Number, Annette?
Do you want to take any? I have,
It's up to the chair.
do we
Go
want
ahead.
comments
Okay,
in the
thank
middle?
you. This is
Well,
concerning
Annette wasn't
the
first.
Shepherd's Crook versus the barbed wire. And I know it might be a nicer look, but we find with the Shepherd's Crook, some of the homeless people throw their jackets over it and just hop over our fences, where they don't tend to do that with the barbed wire. So my question really isn't to the board necessarily, but it is a consideration that I thought is to put together, someone put together personally and bring it up to the city of Laguna Woods to see if this can be withdrawn, this mandate away from us. So it basically, we save money. It hasn't been done yet, but it is, if you make a consideration to only spend $30,000 this year and save $210,000, that buys a year of perhaps unifying some people here in the community to go put together a petition and take it to the city of Laguna Woods to ask them to withdraw this. And that's just, not everybody might feel that way, but it would be a considerable savings to all the mutuals and GRF. It's just something to think about. Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Chair, if I may, just to more information. If we are to replace any or repair any of the barbed wire that's out there because it's either rusted or or breached somehow, the city will not allow us to do that any longer. And in fact, this is how this project came about. We wanted to fix some of the barbed wire that we have out there, and the city said, no, you're not going to be allowed to touch that barbed wire. You're going to need to replace it with something other than barbed wire.
Right.
So they issued a conditional use permit. At the time, we cried foul, and that's what they decided to give us only 900 linear feet requirement, but that's the requirement, that we replace it with Shepherd's Crooks.
Mr. Chairman. So I've had the benefit of going through this fencing issue in United with a number of residents along El Toro Road. And Ernesto and I have shared issues with regard to this. The barbed wire can be easily cut, and in fact, in places, it's completely gone, okay? Now, I agree that we don't need to put in 300 feet of fence this year, okay? We can save some part of that money, $210,000, and not do the Shepherd's Crooks in all those areas. If we wanted to save, there's a place to save some money for next year, let's say, okay? But the barbed wire is not the best because, as I say, it can be easily cut, and a person can actually put their coat over the barbed wire, too. I mean, so Shepherd's Crooks is a lot better. It's a little bit better looking, okay? And possibly it does a little bit better function, okay, than barbed wire. But at this particular point in time, there are sections of the fence whereby the barbed wire has not been rusted out and what have you, and it can still stay for as long as we need it to save a couple of bucks for this year if we wanted to do so.
Thank you. Okay, continue.
We have a speaker.
I believe we have a speaker.
Ralph Majid.
If we could go back to item 14 regarding the golf range, I'd like to point out a few things. The funding for this does appear quite large. I'd like to point out that I do agree with the analysis that it looks like quite a large expense. Perhaps the balancing of the land can be done with the earthwork and delete some other items such as irrigation, which is a very expensive expense. So perhaps the balancing of the ground could be done for the safety of the equipment and maintenance of the grounds. Also, I'd like to point out that I found out that the revenue on the golf range, which is very highly used, by the way, pretty much maximum use, is about $130,000 a year. The expense of staff to maintain and service the golf range is approximately $20,000 to $30,000. So there's quite a return on the golf range. And as staff pointed out, when it's shut down, it does delete a lot of revenues that could come in. So I think it's worthwhile to look at some of the other options as far as balancing the land and smoothing out the topography. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we move on to number 23. Any additional questions on 22? I think we pretty much...
Continue.
Okay, 23. Transfer switches for Clubhouse 4 and 6. This is being provided for disaster preparedness. We need to install generators at these clubhouses, and we don't have those generators at this point. So what the board decided to do was fund the cost of installing the transfer switches first at the clubhouses. So those transfer switches, essentially what they do is they, when the lights go out, you bring a generator, a portable generator, and you attach it to that transfer switch. And what it does, it's that if the power comes back on, then it cuts off the power from the generator. And it also prevents the power from the generator to backfeed into the grid in case there's people working on the grid trying to repair it. they won't get a jolt from the generator. So that's essentially what the transfer switch does. It allows us to very quickly go out there and plug in a generator to the clubhouse so the clubhouse is fully functional. So again, we recommend that you don't remove the funding for that project because of the disaster preparedness requirement for it. Number 24, charging stations at the maintenance service center. This is, again, moving forward, there is a $75,000 that has been allocated for this. We have acquired additional electric vehicles for GRF usage, and this will allow us to charge those vehicles at the yard. So we're recommending that funding be left in place. Community center stuck.
Charging. 24. One question about the EV charging is I noticed that there's charging stations over the EV charging station over there, probably taking up 8 or 9 parking spaces. They are exclusively EV only, and a lot of time it's empty. We are short of space here. Can we make only 4 of them EV only, and the other 4 also shared with other cars?
Thank you. Continue.
You want me to reply?
Carl, doesn't it, Carl?
Sounds like Carl will
I just
reply
have
to
a
that.
question on, these charging stations are just going to be plug-in charging stations, okay? You're not going to be paying for that or what have you. These are just things that the vehicles are going to use, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, we're not going to be, the charge point's not going to involve none of this.
I believe that they're going to go through ChargePoint to put them in place. So at ChargePoint, will do all the work, and then there'll be an administration charge for it for a period of time. Yes.
So then $75,000 is a number that we feel we can hang our hat on?
I understand that that'll get you two charging stations. Here, a guy can answer that.
Where are you going?
Yes,
To-
we
can you
received,
get-
we received bids already on that, and, we're well under that budget amount to put 2 bollards, which is actually 4 charging stations.
So 4 parking spots.
Yes.
So those are going to be 102, there's 120 volt charging stations and not 2?
They're level 2s.
They're level 2
Oh, they're
chargers,
level-
yeah.
Right.
Just like what we have in the parking
Yeah.
lot, we have 3 level 3s, and then we have 2 bollards that are level 2.
Yeah.
It's the same as the level 2 chargers, which is more common for the vehicles that are out there.
Yeah, for our vehicles, we don't need level 3 because we charge overnight, so we're not
Okay.
in a hurry to charge it.
Jim?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Community center stucco flashing. Those who use the community center are probably aware of that this building, every time it rains, we get leaks throughout the windows and doors, and we are constantly having to pull the rugs and do dry down in all our offices. This occurs since I've been working here. So what we want to do is go out and get a consultant to look at the envelope and look at all the doors and windows and come up with a plan for us to fix this so that we can prevent this from occurring in the future. This building is essentially a wooden structure, and we want to make sure that we don't generate dry rot and mold from the intrusion of water in here. So that's what this funding is for. So I would highly recommend that you leave this funding in place to do this work. Number 26 is community center parking study. This was thought to be done in order to move forward with the utilization of the lot in the back. We don't have a study that addresses parking for this building in the event that we were to move security here to the 3rd floor. However, since that idea is being postponed, this parking study is no longer needed. So there's $25,000 that you can avail yourself of. Clubhouse 7, cold storage. Remodel, I understand that there'll be additional revenue.
27?
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize, 27. Yes, that's an item that can be deleted at this point. Metal roof or patio, and there's $25,000 that you can avail yourself of. Number 28, Clubhouse 7, the cold storage remodel. There is, again, this project is not essential. However, I understood from discussions with Brian Gruner that this project, if it moved forward, could generate additional revenue. And I think I have what that revenue would be. And I guess I don't. Brian, do you remember what was the revenue that could be generated from the lockers?
If we were to rent all 24 lockers out at a current rate, and current annual rate of $33, we generate approximately $700 a year.
$700 a year. So again, just providing information to you. We don't have a recommendation as to whether to fund it or not fund it. That's entirely up to you. But there's $25,000 there. And then Gate 11 security technology, we recommend that you don't take the funding away from this project. This will complete our security at our all gates. So, and this is moving forward already. So again, we don't recommend defunding that.
Good.
So with that, I'll turn it over to the committee to give us direction. We'll take that direction and we'll take it to the board since they originally approved the business plan with the capital for their consideration as to whether remove funding or defer projects or what.
Okay, would you like a motion for all of this?
Well, first I'd like direction relative to each one of the projects as to what you want to do.
I have a speaker. I have a speaker.
Go ahead.
All right, Ernesto, can we take a second? And I tried to note ones that staff had recommendations for possible adjustments. Can I just read these numbers to you real quick, make sure I got them all correct?
Sure.
3, 4, 11, 14. Is there 8 also? No, not something that involves Clubhouse 1. That's right, but we're not going to reduce the number for it. These are ones where we might actually.
14, yes.
Right. I put 19 down with the number uncertain because of a cushion.
I have 21 and I'm
Right,
sorry.
well, but 19 was my ad.
Oh, okay.
21, 22, 26, 27, and 28.
21, 22, 26,
27.
27, and 28.
Any others that had any possibilities that I missed?
I think you hit on all of them.
Annette has something right there, Jim.
You did mention about 15, which would be the golf. And then also, the thing I mentioned, and I know you had your.
No, 14 was the golf.
14.
I apologize. Okay.
Oh, I mentioned that.
Oh, I didn't write it down then. I must have missed that one. Okay, and then the other one was, number 9, the Clubhouse 1 padding for $45,000 since we're redoing the clubhouse.
So you've got a John ad and a Annette ad.
Well, whatever. No, John.
No, I know what you mean.
John had nothing to do with this ad.
No. I'm telling you, your thing was,
So
I'm saying
basically-
add a potential reduction.
Oh,
that's
okay.
what I mean.
Oh, I'm sorry. And you're talking about your John, you being
Yeah,
John,
me.
correct?
Yeah.
Got it. All right, I'm sorry. And then the clubhouse 2, where, the number 11, I feel it's more important to do the roof than it is to do the padding. And
Right,
so that was
so-
25, 45. So that's something for you guys to discuss.
So my input for staff direction was, could we create a table of these potential reductions with comments? Because then they could be noted for staff recommendation, and then there's, the committee could submit the ones that any notes we want to have, but we'd have one sheet to look at that shows, here's the things that came out of this meeting as the highest priority for potential adjustment.
So just to recap then, you're looking to use the funding from number 3. That would be minus the $150,000. that we
Right.
talked
I
about. So
started to create just a column by column thing to say,
add up the
what's the
dollars?
total? Because if we say, look, there's $3,200,000 available, then we can walk through as a committee and determine priorities within that.
Would you like me to add it up right now? and
We
just-
could, but are we looking to make a decision today on what to adjust?
If you tell me what projects you want to defund, we will go ahead and write a report and take it to the board, and we could tell you what the total dollar amount is. We can add it up, or you can just tell me which projects, just like you did, and we could do that.
Interesting.
So with regard to the PAC renovation, which is the big gorilla in the room right now, okay, where everybody understands that a lot of this work needs to get done because but we're 1 point something million over budget, okay? We should look at each one of these right now that we were going to defund, and when we reapportion the money, then that money could be the money that's used to do the PAC. Okay, so that when we say this, okay, we're going to defund this one, let's say, or we're going to reduce the amount of money for that, that's now going to be added to the $1.2 million or whatever the heck it is that needs to be done for the PAC, because as I say, the PAC right now seems to be the big gorilla in the room, and we don't have to think about getting that money from our, wherever, okay?
Well, right now, there's about $2.6 million on the ones that you mentioned, the numbers that you mentioned, $2.6 million approximately.
Excuse me, did that include number 22, the saving of $210,000, because you're only going to do $30,000?
It does not. It does not.
I didn't think it did.
Yeah, if you wanted to reduce that, again, I need direction. So we can leave it, or we can reduce it, or however you want to do it. I need a recommendation from you.
So are we ready to go line by line and make these decisions?
Well, yeah,
Let's do it.
That's what we're doing.
All right.
The
Take over.
question I have
Go
on
for
the
it.
Shepherd's Crook right now, we still need to meet the 300 feet, correct?
Yeah.
That's correct.
That's the 30,000.
So that's the $30,000, okay? I mean, as long as we need the 300 feet, I know that Annette had indicated maybe we can go to Laguna Woods and ask them to, do something with that original requirement, okay? But that may never happen, okay? So we have to do the 300 feet, so that's what we're going to say we're going to utilize, 300 feet.
Yeah, I mean, we can go to the city. They've adopted a conditional use permit, so they will have to reopen that. It's very, very unlikely that they'll do that for us.
Fine, I'd like to make a motion, take a crack at this thing. I make a motion that we follow staff recommendation on number 3.
So that's, if I make, that's $471,262.
Number 3. Number 4.
That's $981,149.
Number 11. Clubhouse, should I read each one what it is? The clubhouse roof?
What about 8?
I have no motion on number 8.
Okay, that's on hold, subject to.
I don't want to reallocate those funds, so
Okay.
my motion, somebody can amend it if they like, but I'm good with it where it is.
Very good.
Leave clubhouse 1 money alone.
So you talk about 11, that's 30,000?
Can we go back to 8, because that's already included in the 4 million, John? So this is like double allocating.
That's fine. We need
it's-
it. I'm good with it.
I'm
We can
not
all,
I'm not sure it is.
we're getting outside my motion. We could save it for discussion, but I'm a big believer we leave the entire PAC discussion out of this. We have a whole committee on it, and we'll come back and make recommendations when that's all, when we get the bids, when we see real numbers.
Number 8 is the clubhouse 1, however.
Right.
not Clubhouse 3.
Right, well, clubhouse 1, I'm not putting 8 in. That's up to you guys. If you want to amend my motion, I'm still rolling here on a motion. Okay, I said number 11. Number 14 plus the 138,000, so for a total of $638,000.
Right, 638,000.
I will leave out my personal bias on the other one. Number 21, tennis LED lighting.
There's $50,000.
Number 22, be reduced to the minimum required, which my understanding is 30,000, but Staff should quantify that specifically.
So there's $210,000 there.
Correct. Numbers 26, 27, and 28, each at $25,000. And I make a motion that we reduce or defund all those projects as noted, per staff recommendation.
You don't need a motion,
come
we're
up
just
with
doing it.
Well, that way staff would know what to do. You can treat it as a motion. Yeah. Makes it easier, just have it as a motion.
I have a question for Ernesto regarding the amount of money that we know we need for the PAC, based on the latest estimate that we got, because we had that at the PAC meeting. Do we want to?
That's correct. I think that it was like 4.2.
It was like 4.2 or 4.3 million.
Like 4.2, I'd
And
like to say.
I think we needed an additional $1 to $1.2 million. And as a part of this motion, possibly, we can allocate that money to the PAC so that then we can.
I don't want to cut you off, I'd be really against that. I still think there's a lot of sharpening up that will be done as the bid process goes through, and I don't want that money sitting there ready to be allocated until we see everything. We can make a
Okay,
final
but he was
determination.
looking to go forward with this PAC work.
He can, he is. He's getting bids, that's our next process.
Okay.
So we're not slowing anything down.
No, I'll say it.
Right, I figured we were in discussion, even though no one said it.
So just let me make a couple comments here.
Anything else?
So we added up these figures, it's about $2.5 million, okay? So let me preface that by saying that we will reconcile these numbers with the latest finance reports and with all the invoices that we have in-house that we've received, so that we can take those out. It's not gonna be a big amount, but I wanna make sure that you don't hang your hat on 2.5. The other thing that I'd like to say is that the recommendation to, on number 14, the gate 16 driving range improvement, to defund that will be the committee's recommendation. It's not staff's recommendation. Again.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Please adjust my motion to staff recommendations plus an additional reduction for number 14 for $638,000.
Okay.
So that's included.
Jim, one thing.
That it? Okay.
I have a question regarding that motion.
Okay, Carl.
Each one of these items that we're now defunding or reducing and what have you, are they going to remain on the project log for a future date? Put on hold or
No,
whatever?
once it goes to the board, and the board decides to defund them and allocate them somewhere else. I'm not gonna say the PAC, wherever they decide to allocate them, that's a different discussion. Those projects get taken off the log. We're not gonna be working on those projects. We're gonna be working on something else.
Okay,
So-
but do we lose these projects as a potential for a future year?
You lose the funding, so.
No,
we-
I'm talking about on hold, if you
Oh,
will.
no, we can certainly recommend them for next fiscal year. But it will be part of additional funding requested for 2021.
Exactly, that's
That's
what I'm
correct.
saying. I mean, we shouldn't lose some of the information that's here, okay? It may be a little bit too much too much money for our particular appetite this year, okay? But it could possibly be resurrected because it's something that's needed for a future year.
Absolutely. So these projects that you're defunding, and that we've already done considerable work on, you can bet that you're gonna see them in next proposal for capital next year.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead.
One question, Ernesto, on the lawn bowling roofing. Can we maintain that roof without having to replace it right away? That was one of the things we were defunding. Is that roof safe and functional for a couple, 3 more years, or is that something that's critical?
We'll make sure it is.
Okay. I appreciate it.
So, I mean, you can patch a roof to death, you know? I
Okay.
mean, obviously, the roof, you know, at some point, it's a diminishing return, because you're doing more work on it, but we can continue to keep that viable. And again, like I said, we will propose it again for capital for next year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if we're all through with this item here,
Just a quick concern on this one. We see, seems like the project law is all about the budgeting. We don't look at the schedule, whether we are on schedule or not, whether it's going to take longer, will take shorter, or what's the impact on our. My experience with project management is even if it's on budget, sometimes if it's 3 months, less than 6 months, then we're, although the budget expenses looks like all right, but we are spending staff time, and that time is not working on anything else, so to delay the other project. And back on Carl's talk about all these projects that we are no longer funded, I believe that the standard process is to put it on the wish list, that it's not a must, it's not a need anymore, but it's a wish list, and we don't deal with them anymore at this point, but it will surface. These are problems. These are issues, but not major must done. So we usually put them on a wish list. So that's my two comments. Thank you.
Ernesto, would you like a motion for all these changes we made here?
Sure, after,
We made a motion, and it was seconded.
right.
Well, that's
We
what
didn't
I'm-
vote
Is there
on it.
anybody else who needs to
Right.
speak? We have one more speaker, so if you could have the speaker, and then you can vote on the motion.
Ralph Majid?
There's a parking lot next to the library, probably about 80 feet by 60 feet, but it's quite a large parking lot. There's a need, I feel, for people that have a couple cars that go on vacation, or they have visitors, that they load up our cul-de-sacs. And we know we're in a bind for parking spaces. The RV lots used to be open to individual autos. That was taken away when the people in the RV club said we need parking spaces. So individuals cannot park and pay for a space in any of the parking lots. And it's too bad that happened, because there were several cars in there. My point is, we can get cars off of the cul-de-sacs where we really need to do something. And this big parking lot seems to be empty, 90% of the time. So if we can set up some kind of a process where an individual could rent a spot a month, 2 months, 3 months when they travel, or medical needs or whatever, I think this will be a real benefit to the community. And this is a valuable space that we can utilize, that we really need, and get the revenues for it. So I'd like to see if there could be a study that could be done on this.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we have another speaker.
Okay,
Annette.
Thank you. That parking lot currently is targeted in order to, I think, do a redirect of the emeritus program attendees that are non-resident, that they park a little bit, even though they're paying a parking pass fee, that they park a little bit further away from Clubhouse 1 to allow the residents in Clubhouse, because of the parking problem Monday through Friday there, because of the continual use of that clubhouse and the crowding. I don't know how many of you take classes there, but I do. And then I also think that Chief was looking at that for, I don't know if it was the age well or parking of additional emergency vehicles over there. So, I mean, he was looking at that for several other things too, but right now I know that we were looking at it for the emeritus, just to let you know.
Okay,
Thank you.
where is this on the project log? This is a totally different
It's
topic,
not.
isn't
This
it?
was just, this
This
was just something that
this
was
is
brought
not a
up.
project.
Yeah, we need to
It's not
vote
a
on this
project.
motion, then you guys
just-
can have at it.
I
with the-
understand, but I just wanted to explain, since he said there was
No, I
nothing
get you.
targeted.
You got it, you did your job.
Just a minute, sir. Just a minute. We're going to take a vote here on all these changes. All in favor of the motion, raise your hand, please. Unanimous. Thank you. Okay.
I didn't mean to monopolize this parking lot for one use. I think there could be various uses there, and designate certain areas for certain uses. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I think we're at the end here, Ernesto. Would you agree we're at the end here?
Mr. Chair, I believe we're at the end.
Okay. Items for future agendas, the first bullet, Clubhouse 1 assessment report and presentation in February. EV charging stations at GRF facilities. Concluding business, committee member comments. Any comments? Yes?
With regard to next month's meeting with this Clubhouse One assessment, I hope we get the report a couple of more than an hour before we have to have the meeting, okay? I'd like to have it a week in advance, please. Thank you.
Well said, well said. Anything here? Okay. Date of the next meeting, February the 12th. And I guess we might as well go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you all.
Jim, what time?
Great meeting.
February 12th.